businesses. So we'll go through some slides. I have some examples to show you that, and I think you get a feeling for maybe how some of these techniques can apply to your business. They're not all high-end. I am going to show you some high-end examples, but there's some also very common sense examples that you might be able to do to your website, or if you are in a marketing position or instructional position, be able to take some ideas back to the classroom. So with that, I see Yvonne's given me permission to share. So all right, here we go. I'm going to get rid of this. Very good. Are we good to go, folks?
Looks good, Brian.
Okay, thank you. So we begin with the question, why? Why would we do experiential marketing online? Certainly we've experienced that the trade show and convention industries have been crippled by our recent pandemic experience. Retail shopping, educational programs have basically been turned upside down. And through that, a lot has been moving online. Of course, Zoom and other meetings applications have been very effective. And they can be great for face-to-face interaction, brainstorming, staff meetings, client meetings. So we've found ways as a business community and educational community to introduce some experiential or face-to-face marketing, although somewhat modified. But what about companies that have products that you need to demonstrate? Services or equipment that you want to show prospective customers or perhaps attract students? What if your company has a retail space that showcases goods or you need to make people feel comfortable in those environments? These are the issues that we'll address today through a series of examples of bringing these experiences online to your website. The first example we have is, we'll talk a little bit about 360-degree photos. And what is that? It is an interactive experience. It can be placed in a website, has user controls. Users can navigate, swiping the image. You can also include hotspots that have callouts to specific features or locations or areas of interest. I'll show you a little bit about that today too. And it provides a dynamic user experience. Great thing about 360 photography is that it's also social media compatible, especially with Facebook. I'm going to show you an example that we've done for Giraffe Industries in St. Peter, Minnesota. And here is an example where they really wanted to provide clients with a greater insight into the capabilities of its machinery. Avoiding on-site expensive demonstrations. But we also want a customer-driven presentation. This is key, I believe, to the online aspect of 360 photography, is it needs to be customer-driven in order to give them the level of engagement. And certainly linking hotspots that they can learn more about the machine as if they were there asking questions. And I'll show you the activation points as well. Okay, so here we have what is considered a 360 photo. And these are the activation points that I was telling you about. The user can control these activation points to learn more about certain features of that equipment as if they were actually there and asking questions. What is it about this saw blade? And we can actually build in a little mini video, really enhancing that online experience. Again, the reason why this company is doing this is so that they can avoid really expensive product demonstrations, hauling the machine around, or having people come into their place of business. In case study number 2, this is in an educational environment where North Star Aviation here in Mankato really wanted 360 photos as part of a website redesign project. In the case where I showed you the JARRAFF equipment that was added to their website later, this one was actually one of the reasons why the company wanted to enhance their website and rebuild their website. Certainly the attraction of students to their flight school and aviation program at Minnesota State Mankato to promote the quality of aircraft that they're using and the quality of the training equipment that they have. So we used 360 photography to take that user on their website inside that plane. And we see a side-by-side controls for instructional setting, unmistakably MSU colors on the planes. You can take that user through what it's like inside that aircraft. And this is something that user-controlled 360 photography can do even better than video, because with video, if a video is just playing, we lose that user engagement. So this would be an excellent example of where the photography is just outstanding for a demonstration purpose. And then we can take that prospective student inside the flight simulator. And so if a student is interested in aviation and they see something like this, they might be super excited to learn more about what the flight simulator is. And as we pan around a little bit, looking at how cool that is, we find, oh, it's just sitting there in somebody's office. Again, these are examples of 360 photography that are delivered on web. Now for retail environments, and this has really been very important recently, because as retail environments have been somewhat limited in terms of the customer that they can bring in, how are they trying to connect with customers online? Through social media and through any online experiences that they can give. And even now when stores are opening, some customers might be a little bit intimidated to go into those retail environments. So we can help that by allowing a customer to explore that virtually. They can travel from room to room or department to department. They can get a general idea of what the inventory is like there. And like I said, it can be promoted through social media. So we're gonna take a look at what Hilltop Florist is up to. And this is actually just a couple of days old. So we can tell when they're having their end of the season patio plant sale. We can see that they have some great looking product left. We've got some hanging baskets up here and have some beautiful products. So some customers are really now they're at a level of engagement that it's worth the trip. They're gonna make that trip in. We can also take a look here. Let's go inside the store virtually. So we're clicking through. One of the things that this merchant has done is widened their aisles, made the interior of the store compatible with the type of shopping that is required now to adhere to CDC and state guidelines. And so again, we can just spin that around and see. We can actually see the markings on the floor here too. So a customer is put somewhat at ease in knowing that this merchant has taken their safety to a very high level. And again, we can see our markings on the floor. And then maybe to some individuals that have not experienced the showroom and what type of products are available. Who knew they had clothing? Who knew they had furniture? So this is a really awesome way to showcase your retail environment online. The next thing I'm going to show you is a 360 3D product experience. And this has become important too for especially merchants that have the capability of selling products, or at least introducing products online through an e-commerce or just a website, but maybe the little photos that are allowed in eBay or Amazon aren't enough. So I'll show you what can be done with an interactive 3D product experience. And for those of you that work in retail or products that are companies that have product demo needs, might find this interesting. It's not particularly hard to do. It's a little bit time consuming. But we're going to show you how we can actually look at the product and rotate it on the XY axis. And the user then being able to see quite a bit of detail. This is a company that manufactures high performance products for the snowmobile industry. And their clients, their customer base includes many millennials. We have a ton of custom configurators in their website and photo viewers to enhance the user experience. These customers are very particular about their skis. And as in several retail environments and also in some service industries, customers are very particular about certain aspects of their product. This 3D products experience really lets you look at it close up. And there's a certain cool factor with it as well. I'll take you through a couple of different layers of what can be done. And it's kind of interesting because when we think of this kind of user experience on web, we think, oh, you know, where can you choose the color of your product? You know, we certainly can see that on automotive websites and some of the clothing websites. You know, this is a way of introducing that technology to small to medium-sized businesses. This is a small to medium-sized business, and it's allowing some user control. And then here is that 360 experience to be able to look at that product from just about any angle. So right now we're rotating around the x-axis so that that user can see. And what we learned is that, for example, this detail on the bottom of those skis is very important to a competitive rider. And now we're going to spin around the y-axis so we can see all the detail of the product. And this is made up of individual photographs that are then placed into a plugin for a WordPress site that allows that user to control that experience. Again, we can probably do that with video, but if we lose the user control and the user engagement, I think it's really important here to be able to have that control. Just one more thing I'm going to show you on this one. And that is, go back to the home page here. It's another color configurator. And in this particular color configurator, for an extra $100, these competitive racers can create their own blends of colors on the screen. So here's another interactive experience, and we'll use our Maverick colors here. I'm going to start with purple as a base color. And what would happen if at the point of manufacturing, rather than a solid color, you were offered the opportunity to kind of blend and mix colors. And so we're going to mix in our Maverick Gold with that and see what that ski would actually look like. And we're going to highlight just a little bit with some white highlights. And we can come up with colors that are, you know, not really attractive, but some that are quite attractive. And this gives that customer a really close interpretation of what that blend would look like. And I can see that this technique being popular in anything that would have to do with finishing or refinishing of product to be able to give that experience. I'm going to continue on just talking about the importance of just photography. And I'm glad that Matt Schindel is joining us today because he'll be familiar with this project. We built this one together. A good photo is worth 1,000 customers. Good photography elevates your company. It improves your user experience. Conveys a feeling of quality, delivers an impression of experience and expertise. And I think it's important too that you can combine your original photos with stock images. And it's also important to recognize too that, you know, in some of these examples I've given, they're using 360 photography, and there's obviously a interface with a website. Whether that be a WordPress or Drupal or Joomla website that can add to some investment. Whereas if you're looking at your website and thinking, how can I really make a customer feel what it's like to be part of this business, part of this store, or part of this factory, those images, and I'm going to use this example because it has images that are professionally done, it has images that are stock photos, and it has images that are just shot with somebody's iPhone and put on the site. So this is an example of a very inexpensive way of building user experiences into your website. And we're familiar with DOTSON iron castings. And really, this experience was needed to create a visual appeal that was important to their customers, but also workers. So we know that their HR department loved it. It improves the functionality of the website through frequent, impactful imagery. As I mentioned, both using stock and on-site photos, there's just a better experience through photos. And I like to think of photography, especially on web, but it's not limited to web. It could be on brochures and things like that. people, patterns, and processes. We want to be able to show all of that through the use of photography. First off, there's a photo composite at the top of the screen that leads the user into an experience right away that maybe if they looked at an iron castings company, you know, a foundry, they might expect to see, you know, something much more industrial, like pouring metal or something like that. And when the marketing manager and Lime Valley were working on this, it's very important for them to showcase the company in a much more technology savvy light. And here's where those images of textures and patterns come in. And just about everywhere you look on this website, there's going to be some photography. And not all the photography is professionally done. Some of it is done in-house by their own employees. But you can see in this example, we didn't have to use photos here, but we did use photos because we knew that the photography was going to really enhance the experience. So we look at the textures and the patterns, and now the people, really utilizing people to create that that level of engagement with somebody using this site. Even the pattern that's created here is actually using people and creating a pattern using photography in the footer. And so you can see that whereas many of these photos were probably professionally done, many of them were not. So as we go and look at even secondary pages, we can see the examples of maybe some stock photography used, for example, in some of these instances. Product photography. Making sure that people are represented pretty much on every page that you can go to. Here would be an example of, you know, something that, you know, a photo that was just done at that day and at that time to showcase a certain aspect of education at the company. So here's another example of using a pattern as photography. So in this example, where we're straying a little bit from our 360 interactive experience, I wanted to showcase a website that really used photography as a very critical element to the design. And it's interesting because this website is, oh, it's at least 4 years old. And frankly, I think it looks about as fresh as the day it was launched because of the use of photography and textures and patterns. It's all about creating that experience for a user when they're on your website. Again, if that's something that that's a 360 experience, or something that is a regular photographic experience. I think that what we can learn from this is different ways of promoting equipment and products, just depending on, and you can see the menu over here, what that user wants to see. And in this case, I've jumped to the cab now, and I can see this, I want to see what that touch screen looks like. And so I'm going in there, and geez, this looks like a glass roof. It looks like if a tree limb fell on it, it'd probably come right through, but there's safety devices that are built in, and we can see those. We can see those in here. Okay. I think we're at a point now where we can take a look at any questions that anybody might have. I kind of went through the examples quickly so that we would have some time to look at questions if anybody has any.
That was great. Thank you so much, Brian. That was fascinating. So we have a question from Helen. Helen, if you'd like to unmute and go ahead and ask your question, go right ahead. Anybody else that has questions, you can put them in chat, and that'll just be a way for me to know who to call in next.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, how long an average user is doing this experiential marketing, and what's the close rate on that?
Those statistics I don't have for you, Helen.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Fine.
What sorts of qualitative reactions have you heard from your clients, though? You know, when you put something like this on their website and they've had, you know, interactions with customers, what sort of feedback are you getting?
Well, in the case of when I showed you the CNA Pro ski, that snowmobile ski, for example, the difference between showcasing that product in a 360 environment and where the user can actually control their colors, a couple of things happen. Number one, the feedback has been that they have much fewer misorders. That client is seeing, that customer is seeing exactly what their product is on screen. They also have that custom color configurator where I showed you the marbleizing and stuff like that. That particular feature, it was very difficult for them to sell until we created some type of online experience where that buyer could take some control over the colors and then be able to say, oh, that's what I want. So their sales for that went up dramatically because of the user experience that we were able to create online.
Wow, that's cool. I was curious, and I'll ask one of my questions. Looking at that 360-degree photography, could you talk a little bit about how that's achieved? Is that a special camera? I don't know anything about it.
You bet. Let's take, for example, the one that we just did recently at Hilltop Florist. In a retail environment, really that store owner wanting to show a special that they were having. And so we bring our camera in, and it is a special camera. It is operated remotely. It's interesting, from the 360, you never see the camera, nor do you ever see anybody using the camera because it's operated from mobile phone.
Cool.
So the photographer is setting up the camera, stepping away with their mobile device, previewing the photo, and then taking the picture. So yes, it is a special phone camera, and you're using a mobile phone as the interface. The next step of that is to assemble those images, because when it comes out, well, let's just call it a raw format. It is not usable. They don't look really really good. They need to be stitched into a software, and then that photo is usable. Then the next step, where is that usable then? You know, because you can have it on a tablet or you can have it on your phone, but that doesn't do your customers much good. You really need to bring that into your website, and that is a platform called Marzipano that allows the in any environment, it can be in WordPress or Drupal or Joomla, it doesn't really matter, that software can use that and then create that user interface online. So there's several steps to that, and some equipment. I can tell you right now that those cameras are not expensive. They're cheap. I mean, seriously, they're a few $100. Now, if you want something broadcast quality, you're not going to get that for a few $100. But for the examples that I showed you today, they're pretty clear.
Yeah. John Olson has a question for you. John, you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
I'm just wondering, I have two different cameras available. I've got a GoPro Fusion, and plus I've got an Insta360. my problem is a lot of times when I'm using that camera, especially the Insta, the files are huge. Which camera is better suited for, this type of sales, I guess, with the internet?
I think that that your GoPro is probably going to have some limitations that way, in that the file size is going to build really, really quickly. My guess is that your 360, if that's a 360, did you say an instant? Those file sizes are they're pretty manageable. You're going to be able to load them if your camera has a cell phone interface, for example. You will be able to load them to your cell phone and create manageable files with that. In our experience anyway, when we're using that 360 camera, we've not run into a situation where the phone itself is not able to handle it. And we've used both the Apple products and Android phone products with the 360 camera, and they're both compatible.
Hey, Brian. Your stuff is just so cool. I could just watch this all day. I do have a couple questions. I'm curious, in both the situation of the retail up at Hilltop Florist and also with DOTSON, with all the people featured, how often do you suggest that these places update these pictures or these walkthroughs so that they stay current?
Sure. In the case of Hilltop Florist, because they actually are using that photo of their outdoor potted patio plants and things like that, that's a promotion they're running right now. So that was as easy as us going up there, taking the photo, and believe me, it takes about 10 minutes. You take the photo and run it through the software. Then that photo is ready for them to put on Facebook. Facebook already has the player. I use that term Marzipano for website. That's what the website requires, but Facebook already has their own player. So you don't have to do anything except upload that 360 photo. So there's in terms of updating them, I would guess that Deb is probably going to update that in a week. When her plants are sold out, she's probably going to pull that down and do something else. Maybe they have a class that they're going to do out in the greenhouse or something like that. Then they're set to be able to use that again. So in a retail environment, because it's fairly quick and pretty easy, I expect that they're going to be changing that out weekly. Now, in some other instances where it's training, or in the case of DOTSON, where we are showing a lot of people, they will probably update that maybe a couple of times a year.
Helen is next. Go ahead, Helen.
Hi, I'm just full of questions, I guess.
All right, maybe I can answer this one.
Can you add SEO to your images, since they are images? I didn't know if it converted it into like a video like.
You will be able to add the tags. And then also, if you end up with your photos or your experience on YouTube, you're going to be able to add all of the SEO content on those pages.
Okay, great. And then my other question is, like, when you're on Hilltop, for example, if I'm doing the UX and kind of cruising through the store and I'm like, oh, I want that towel. I saw a towel. Could you purchase directly from there? I mean, like if you can click and just purchase, or?
Because it's 100% in a web environment, all of the e-commerce capabilities that you would have in a web environment would be available. What you'd be doing with the 360 experience is simply offering that user another way to access content. And so Hilltop is not doing that right now with their 360 experience. But if you did see something there and we would create one of the hotspots for that. And that hotspot would explain that product in more detail and then give you yet another link to access the e-commerce page. That's a great question. In fact, it's a really good idea.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ruth Ann has a question for us.
Hi, Brian. Say, I have a question for you, and I'm curious about your thoughts in using the 360 experience or photography for a service. such as massage, yoga, Reiki. So what are your thoughts there?
In the service industry, I think one of the best advantages of 360 photography would be for somebody who is perhaps new to a service, new to the area, or new to you as a service provider, that you would be able to offer them an experience where they could really see your place of business. There's a certain comfort level maybe that that a new customer would need to be brought to, and that would be a service business like you're describing. Maybe it's some type of a studio environment for either health and wellness, or maybe it's an environment where it's an attorney's office for some reason. There's a level of curiosity certainly, but then there's also a level of intimidation. 360 photo experiences are going to be able to get that customer as if they were in your office environment, and maybe diffuse those. It would satisfy their curiosity, and then maybe diffuse some of the hesitation that they might have because they don't know what it's like to be there.
I was just thinking about, I have a good friend who's on the spectrum and really likes to sort of pre-visit places so that she feels a little more, you know, at ease when she actually goes there. This could be a fantastic thing. I'm going to be telling her about the sites that you've done. I want to see if that would be something that would kind of simulate what she used to do, which would be to go and kind of look around before she'd come for an appointment or something. She'd go and actually park her car and walk in and see what the office entrance looked like and all that before she'd come for her actual appointment. So anyway, I think that'd be kind of cool. Other questions? If you have a question, you can post it in chat or raise your hand for Brian. I love the examples that you showed, all really fantastic companies. Just great companies in our area. JARRAFF's products are just the neatest things. The videos of those things crawling over the rocks are just incredible.
Right. I think you could see from, obviously from the JARRAFF one that, you know, they started, we introduced that technology to them many months ago. You could tell with the snowbanks. But now it's kind of interesting with the lack of travel that's been part of their industry as well. Now they are an essential industry because their equipment is used to clear trees and limbs, whether it's in power lines and various utility environments, where that's absolutely essential to keep those right-of-ways clear. And so they, even though they are labeled an essential industry, the fact that we had introduced this type of demo to them several months ago really heightened in importance when their salespeople were less able to travel via air travel or whatever, to go into areas of the country that, you know, that their equipment needed demonstrating. So I think that some of the examples are very recent. And some of the ideas that we have for, well, whether it's retail or service environments, hospitality industry in restaurants, for example, I think that's really important too, that with the distancing that's required, what if somebody wanted to know, oh, I wonder what it looks like in that restaurant? How far away are, certainly a 360 photo is going to do that for them very quickly.
I love that idea. I was just contemplating the idea of a haircut. And so I'm calling up the hair place saying, so how far apart is everybody and how are you doing this so that it's safe and everything? Wouldn't it be great to, yeah, just we'll go to the website and say, this is what it looks like when somebody's in there having a haircut. Mike Hahn has a question for you. Go ahead, Mike.
You bet, Brian. Good to see you again. Thanks for your presentation. As the Regional Director for the Small Business Development Center, you and I have had conversations about this on occasions, and I always appreciate your viewpoint. But in your area of, as far as marketing expertise, where do you see the state of our economy right now, as far as locally and regionally? And even though the Feds say we're in a recession, do you think, you know, how resilient do you think that we will be as far as coming out of that?
That's a good question, Mike. And as a business owner, as a small business owner locally, I can tell you that you know, our business is basically in the tank for the last several months. However, we've noticed an uptick in activity about 2 weeks ago. Okay, and probably even more so. We could pinpoint it even a week and a half ago. Just depending on where restrictions are being lifted and the level of optimism that that other businesses have. And so I think that what's going to drive that then is through a level of optimism and again, the restrictions being lifted, that businesses are going to be able to start marketing again. They're going to have more confidence that their marketing messages are not going to fall on deaf ears, that we are going to be able to bring business back again. Now, most of our business here at Lime Valley that I'm speaking to is really in business to business. It's not as much in retail, although I did show you one retail example here. I think that what I'm hoping happens and what we're starting to see is companies that are okay, they're similar to Lime Valley, is that they've lost a couple of months of business here. What do we need to do to bring that back? Because we are not going to end 2020 minus 2 months of business. We need to make that up between now and the end of the year. I hope that level of optimism carries us through in the business community. That's my best hope.
Thank you.
Sarah has a question for you. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, so I love everything that you've said. I actually got a list of stuff to kind of reevaluate our own website. I was wondering, because there's some businesses I have in mind that I think would really benefit from the interactive website that you showed. Do you do like consultations with them if I give you their your information, or what's the best way for them to contact you and kind of see what you did here today since they weren't able to be on today?
Well, we have, I appreciate that. Thank you, Sarah. The presentation itself could be made available to anybody that was not able to attend today. If you had individuals in mind, we would definitely share that with them so they could go through the experience that you had here today. And then still being interested, you know, we would definitely meet with them to try to find out. I mean, there's a lot of technology that we've kind of thrown out there this morning. What would be the best fit for what those businesses need to communicate in their website? That's the conversation that we would have. Those consultation sessions are no charge. We just want to make sure we can find some type of solution. We're doing a pilot program with the city of Belle Plaine, where the city has actually set aside funds for small businesses to have exactly the type of consultation that you just described. That's going to be a huge benefit for the small businesses in that community.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I have another question, kind of tying this back to social media. One thing that we talk about often in this in social media breakfast is, you know, fresh posts. What are some kind of fresh new sorts of things that one can do? This really seems like an opportunity to do something different and unique. So maybe could you talk a little bit about how one might use either the 3D photography or the 360 as a social media post, or, you know, or something that you use effectively with social media?
In a business, let's use the pro ski as an example. That they would be able to post to their social media community that they have this cool simulator, you know, that we can spin the ski around, and you can, now you might not be able to demonstrate that in the post itself, but you can certainly link to that and describe how that could take place. And another successive post could be that that you could choose these wild colors for marbleizing your professional snowmobile ski. You know, who could live without that? So those are great social media posts because they're relevant for that audience, and they're just kind of cool as well. And so you can use those I think that that's what I would do with any of this technology. Let's look at Giraffe Industries. They can post about how they have the in-cab controls where the user can actually go in and experience that. North Star Aviation, for example, the flight simulator that they have on campus. That's huge. That's huge for their marketplace. Now, what we're doing for them is we're using a digital campaign to drive traffic to that website. And we're not using as much social media there, but it certainly could be.
I think that's one of the things I was hearing you repeat kind of throughout your presentation and in your answers to your questions is that, that knowledge of the customer and fitting, obviously, fitting what you're doing to that customer's, what you know about what that customer is looking for.
Yeah, and that's where it ties in really closely to social media because you already have that community. And so the relevance of the post you already know is going to be really high. You just need to be able to do it in a way that that pulls them in. For the 360 photo that its application in Facebook, for example, that's going to be super cool just right there. You don't even have to drive that traffic. The experience is going to be, for those that want instant gratification, it's going to be right there.
That's awesome. So we're coming up on the hour. I just want to check in with everybody. Any last questions, comments? Now's your moment. I also, well, first I want to say a big thank you, Brian. I'm so pleased, that you were able to meet with us today and to share all the information that you did. Love the examples. Those were just super cool. I felt like I learned a lot. And Sarah's doing it. I'm going to encourage everybody else. You have your little raise on the hand thing. You can give Brian a clap by clicking on reactions and click on the little clap thing if you want. It's really awesome. Thank you all for coming to Social Media Breakfast. I wanted to take just a moment to, we have some folks here that weren't here at the very beginning. Mike Hahn from the SBDC, thank you so much for your sponsorship of Social Media Breakfast. I believe Mike Sargent, possibly Wes may be here from Auto Media Group. Thank you for your sponsorship. Corey from Region 9. Thanks for being here for Social Media Breakfast. And you guys all have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next month, second Friday at 8 a.m. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.